Do you need to know how to make some continuous bias binding without using loads of fancy tools? I'm making a little blouse and I need to make some bias binding for the arm and the neck hole. I've got some tools here, but something that you've probably got at home: a set square, a ruler, a pair of scissors, and I've got a friction pen, but some sort of marking pen that you can use on your fabric that will disappear either by washing or ironing. First of all, draw a square of fabric. I'm going to do a 24 centimetre square. I'm just marking out the 24 centimetres. Create a good square. I'll do that. Now I'm going to mark out the width of the bias binding that I wish to have. I'm going to start from the corner here using my set square. So there's my first line. I would like my bias binding to be 1 inch thick. So I'm going to need some marks for this as well. I'm joining up my marks to create the strips of bias binding. I hope you can see all the little lines I've got on there. Now fold the fabric in half with your markings on the inside, and we don't fold it over directly like that. We have to off center those lines, and that line there is crossing over here. A pin in there, and the same thing here. The line is crossing over, so when that's stitched, those lines will meet up. This is all pinned along there, just a narrow hem. There's a really narrow hem along here. I'm going to finger press this open simply because the pen I've used is one that disappears with heat. If you've used a different way of marking your fabric, then you might be able to iron yours. I'm going to turn it out so I can see the stripes. So I'm hoping you can see along the seam here where those stripes are pretty much matching up. Now I'm going to cut along these. Got this big shape here, and this seam need to go together. Again, we need to offset the stripes, so miss the first one out, join the two next ones together so that those lines cross over. I want the two stripes to meet when we're stitching it. So I'm just checking these stripes are going to cross at the point of stitching. So now this just needs to be stitched across here. I've stitched across here. Going to finger press again. And I can turn it out so I can see all my stripes. They're pretty much matching up there. And now I can cut out along the lines. It's quite fun because you go round and round, revealing a long strip of bias binding. Got my bias binding, and I mixed up my centimetres and inches earlier. I cut out a 24 centimetre square, which is about 9.5 inches, and measured this, and there is well over 2.5 yards of bias binding there. Or if you work in centimetres, it was a 24 centimetre square fabric, 2.5 centimetre wide bias binding, and it's given me about 2 meters 40 in length. I hope this demystifies how to make continuous bias binding and you have a go yourself. Thank you for watching.